Then he said to them all, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Oftentimes, when we think of the cross, we think of it as a piece of jewelry. And you can get some really nice cross necklaces to fit your individual styles and tastes. You can get some made of gold or silver or really any precious metal you can think of. And I've even seen some of my favorite rappers sporting some really nice looking crosses with some encrusted jewels and diamonds and such. And they can get really, really pricey. Today, the message of the cross is a symbol of hope and salvation. But for the disciples who first heard these words of Jesus, the cross meant something entirely different. It was not glamorous like the jewelry we make it into today. Instead of symbolizing hope and salvation, it was a symbol of hopelessness, condemnation, and shame. For them, the cross was an instrument of extreme torture and execution. In fact, we get the word excruciating from the word crucify. It was Rome's favorite method of dispatching anyone who would threaten the Pax Romana or Roman rule and peace. For the Romans, it was a symbol of law and order to keep the people they oppressed in check. It is quite likely that the disciples had even seen the brutality of the cross as they walked along the roads of Judea. They might have seen men and women hanging to a cross naked and beaten under the unforgiving Middle East sun, just struggling painfully with every breath they take until the last wisps of air escape their lungs. That is what the cross was to them. This is the cross that Jesus is telling them to pick up and walk with him with. It's the cross that he tells us to pick up. Last week I talked about how I found my faith again, and one of the things that really convinced me the most, and I didn't say it last week, but what convinced me the most was the idea or the realization that the disciples who heard these very words, they would go on to die because they had seen the risen Christ and refused to stop proclaiming his name. These disciples were crucified, stabbed to death, clubbed to death, burned alive, and beheaded. Now, I'll ask you, would you be willing to die such a horrible death for what you knew to be a lie if Christ hadn't actually resurrected? And persecution of the church continues today. One statistic I saw was that over 1 million Christians have been martyred for their faith in just the last 10 years. We in America have it really good. We don't have to fear persecution for our faith. The most persecution that we have seen in the last 10 years was when Starbucks didn't put jingle bells and snowflakes on their Christmas cups, or when we were asked to inconvenience ourselves during a global pandemic to keep our neighbors and loved ones safe. Jesus tells us that to be his disciple, we must be willing to deny our own interests, to pick up our instrument of execution, and to follow him to Golgotha and die to ourselves. And this is not just a one-time thing, but a continual daily exercise of putting the needs and the good of others above my needs and above my good. We may never be called upon to give our lives for the gospel, but we are called to sacrifice our egos, our pride, our selfishness, all of that for the sake of the gospel. And believe me, I know it's not easy, but it's through self-sacrifice and our love for God and others, as well as our proclamation of the risen Christ, that will be our witness to our non-Christian neighbors. What I want to challenge us this week is for us to look for ways in which we can deny our own interests and wants and maybe even our needs for the sake of showing love for God and love for people. Thank you so much for tuning in today. God bless you.